It's Aloha Friday. Maybe that's the song we should do today. Yeah, doesn't feel like Aloha Friday though, let me tell you. Just another digit in a long line of numbers. Welcome back, Reno Dave, Tamara. Thank you all for tuning in. Kick off this last little live stream here for the week. Fingernails are tough. I don't know if that's useful or you can see, but usually I try and keep my nails so they poke just over the tip of my finger. And then as far as shaping them goes, it'll focus, no it won't. Just roughly rounded. For a long time I was shaping them so that they kind of angled up this way so that the highest point of the nail was, if you're looking at them straight on the right side, just because that gave a more shallow pick angle across the strings when you were picking normal finger style. But lately I've been just doing kind of rounded most of the way across, just with a slight lift on the right side. But the main thing that you can do is make sure that on the edges you don't have any corners. Because if you have a corner where if you want to round it all the way down to where the nail pops out of your finger. If you don't do that, you'll end up with a hooked edge and you'll end up grabbing the strings with that. So make sure that when you file all the way under to the edge of where your fingernail is coming out. So that kind of the line that it might follow back into your finger, you want to include that in your rounding of the fingernail. Yeah, 3 minutes to go. Nobody's late. We're all right on time. Somebody's looking for the link though. There it is. Hope everybody's doing well on this Aloha Friday. That's what we call it in Hawaii. There's a famous song called Aloha Friday by Uncle Kimo. Let's see if I remember how it goes. Here's where I sit on cloudy days with my prima bottles lying everywhere. Got a guitar in my hand and a snow can under my ʻUkulele chair. It's Aloha Friday, no work until Monday. It's Aloha Friday. Something along those lines. Except we're not quite sure about the no work till Monday part. We might have no work until whenever, or I don't know. It's kind of ambiguous at this point. But yeah, classic old song, good fun if you want to look it up. Beautiful day on Maui. That's nice to hear. It's pretty lovely on Big Island too. I took a walk this morning, kind of wake myself up, and it was high clouds and just nice lighting, beautiful. But yeah, I think the rest of the island chain's still getting some rain. Not sure about that, but so I think today probably going to mostly just review songs and try and address any last issues anybody might have about playing the songs. There are maybe a couple things we could add to, well, we're gonna add some things to one day to maybe change the strumming. I'd give you one more strumming pattern to take away that's useful for that song. Yeah, should be good. So just to get started, let's run through the songs that we know, and then we can talk about adding things to them as we go. So let's jump in, do Hunger Strike. I'm kind of not looking forward to the Bruno Mars song because that's a lot of work, but we'll do it anyways. And just kind of start ourselves off here with the play along, and then jump into changing the strum bass. Okay, so let's start with Hunger Strike, starting on C and the F. Use whatever strum you like. We talked about the down strum and the down and up. I'm probably just gonna do down because that's what feels good today. Okay, 1, 2, starting on C. Well, I don't mind stealing bread from the mouths of decadence. Just C and F. I can't feed on the powerless when my cup's already overfilled. But it's on the table, the fire's cooking, and they're farming babies, the slaves are all working. Blood is on the table, the mouths are choking. I'm going hungry. I'm going hungry. I'm going to stop there because usually as I teach, I think of things as I go along. Actually, the strum that I wanted to teach for one day works just the same for hunger strike. So I'm going to teach it here because we're more comfortable with these chords, and you won't have to think about the left hand so much. The left hand can do something simple, and we'll use our brain power to improve the right hand. So what we're doing here is the first two down strums that we've been playing are the same. But after the first two down strums, you're going to strum a quick down up. Down, 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 up. Down, 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 up. So your hand is bobbing at, is that a quadruple time kind of bob? Playing this. It's actually double time. So if we're playing, this is our down strum, and 2 and 3 and 4 and the actual hand motion to get this other strum to work is going to be twice that. So of course, if you play all of that, it's going to be too busy. But that's in this case, that's what the grid that we're working on top of is, to get all the rhythmic locations that we're going to need. This is your grid body, not the strum. So down, 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 up, 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 down. Okay, so in context of the song, it fits over our two down strum pattern that we had with the just this becomes, and it carries the song a lot better in my opinion. Down, 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 up, down. And then you switch chords. That's all you get. Down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down, 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 up, down. So your first down is always going to be on a chord change. Down, 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 up, F, down, down, up, C, down, down, up, F, down, down, up, C, down, 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 down. Well, hopefully the internet will clear up a little bit here. I'm on the computer that has been working, so it's either the internet. It's got to be the internet. That's what I'm sticking to. Got to be the internet. It seems like there's been spotty patches as we've been going through these lessons, but hopefully it'll clear up. Well, looks like there we go. So let's try that with the Hunger Strike song using that new strum, down, 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 up. And remember, you just use it once per chord. So let's try that. Starting on C. 1, 2, ready, go. I don't mind stealing bread from the mouths of decadence. And if you want to just go down, down, that's fine. I can't feed on the powerless when my cup's already overfilled. But it's on the table, the fire's cooking, and they're farming babies, the slaves are all working. Blood is on the table, the mouths are choking. I'm going hungry. I'm going hungry. Let's try one more time just to keep practicing that strum. I don't mind stealing bread from the mouths of decadence. But I can't feed on the powerless when my cup's already overfilled. walking, and the farming babies, the slaves are working. Blood is on the table, the mouths are joking. I'm going hungry. I'm going hungry. I'm going hungry. I'm going hungry. Let's stop on C. So that kind of livens up the rhythm. I think it makes it a little more alive. It helps push the song and swing the feel of each chord kind of back and forth like water in a container, as opposed to just chug, chug, chug. You have like a slow bit at the beginning, and then it speeds up at the end with the down, 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 up. The fast part kind of slings you into the next chord, and it kind of just gives it some motion. Hello, Michael. Good Friday to you. We have Germany in the house too. That's great. Aloha. So, because I want to warm my voice up a little bit more, let's skip to Island Style, and we'll come back to the Bruno Mars song, because that's sort of a beast this early. Let's try Island Style. We'll use a straight strum, because I know when you guys go away, you're going to find many, many examples of swing songs, and you'll end up playing probably more swing style than straight style. So I'm gonna be the stiff, rigid teacher here. I'm gonna stay with the straight style, and we'll practice it that way. Got the tune in my head. Hopefully you've got it in your head a little bit. Let's start on C with our lead in, C to C7 if you like, up to F for the beginning of the chorus. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, C. C7 if you want, F. On the island, we do it island style. From the mountain to the ocean, from the windward to the leeward side. On the island, we do it island style. From the mountain to the ocean, from the windward to the leeward side. Okay, go into the verse. Mama's in the kitchen, F, cooking dinner real nice. Beef stew on the stove, G7, only salmon with the ice. We eat and drink and we sing all day. Kani kapila in the old Hawaiian way. On the island, we do it island style. From the mountain to the ocean, from the windward to the leeward side. On the island, we do it island style. From the mountain to the ocean, from the windward to the leeward side. Okay, stay on C, next verse. We go grandma's house on the weekend, clean yard cars. If we no go, grandma's gotta work hard. You know my grandma, she likes the boy real sour. I love my grandma every minute, every hour. On the island, we do it island style. From the mountain to the ocean, from the windward to the leeward side. On the island, we do it island style. From the mountain mountain to the ocean, from the windward to the leeward side. From the mountain to the ocean, G7, windward to the leeward side. One more time on the tag. From the mountain to the ocean, from the windward to the leeward side. Try the Indian. 3, 4, C, G7, C. All right, let's try the Indian just one more time because I know we didn't review that, and that's a little bit of the hardest part. So C, 2, 3, 4, C, G7, C. Let's try it all together. I'll count you in. 1, 2, ready, C. C, 2, 3, 4, C, G7, C. You can use that with any song in the key of C. Most songs in the key of C. It might sound kind of corny in some, but it's really good for kind of country-ish style songs, you know, things that might seem like they could be country, like this kind of song. Whew. Yeah, I would stop. Let's try the Bruno Mars song. Now we're going to introduce that A minor chord, which is the 2nd fret on the top string. Let's see if I can pull up the words here. Just the way you are. Okay. So remember, this is a progression-based song, so we have a pattern that we stick to throughout the entire thing. It's going to be C, and then A minor, and then F, and then we go back to C. Okay, and so that's it's not necessarily even. It's not, the timing for the chords isn't exactly the same everywhere, but the chord changes always happen in the same order. So you kind of got to use your judgment as far as when the changes happen, but they're always going to be the same changes. You're always going to go to the next chord in the pattern, right? Let's try it. 4 on the floor kind of a thing with the down strum. If you want to do something different, feel free. I won't be able to hear you, so, you know, use it as a sandbox to play around a little bit. We'll try C, A minor, F, and I will attempt to sing the song. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Her eyes make stars look like they're not shining. Her hair falls perfectly without her trying. She's so beautiful, and I tell her every day. Yeah, I know, when I compliment her, she won't believe me. And it's so sad to think she don't see what I see. But every time she asks me to, I look okay. I say, when I see your face, there's not a thing that I would change. 'Cause you're amazing, just the way you are. And when you smile, the whole world stops and stares for a while. 'Cause girl, you're amazing, just the way you are. Her lips, I could kiss them all day if she'd let me. Her laugh, she hates, but I think it's so sexy. She's so beautiful, and I tell her every day. Oh, you know, I'd never ask you to change. If perfect's what you're searching for, then just stay the same. So don't even bother asking if you look okay. You know I say, when I see your face, there's not a thing that I would change. 'Cause you're amazing, just the way you are. And when you smile, the way you are. When I see your face, it's not a thing that I would change, 'cause you're amazing, just the way you are. And when you smile, the whole world stops and stares for a while, 'cause girl, you're amazing, just the way you are. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, so hopefully that's all right for you folks. You're able to kind of improvise some strumming stuff. In a case like this, the obvious strum variation would be to add some up strums in between where you're kind of playing just down, up, but you're changing the accents on the different strums, which sort of brings out and highlights different rhythms. That is, you can play this. That's fine, but you could also play. It's basically the same thing. I'm just intentionally hitting some of the strums harder to kind of change the flow of things so that the down up pattern becomes a million times more interesting because I'm intentionally making certain strums louder. So that's always something to experiment with too. Even if you're just playing a simple down strum, if you change the volume or the dynamics of a certain strum, you can kind of make it breathe inside that very simple pattern. Like right there, I kind of turned it into a waltz just because I'm emphasizing that first strum in that location. So you can really move the feel of the strum around just by playing with the accents. So that would sort of be the next level of strumming for this song. So let's jump into one day and try and use the strum we were just doing for. Looks like ducks flying outside my window. Never seen them before. Let's try that down, up strum that we were using for Hunger Strike, but use it on top of the 1 day chords. So in this case, it's going to be down, up G, down, up A minor, and then F. Right? That plus the chords might be kind of a challenge, but that's okay because this will all be replayed later and you can go back and reference what is happening and practice along with it. And if the strum is really overwhelming right now, just focus on the chords, or if you got the chords down pat, try and add the strumming, but definitely don't overwhelm yourself. You're going to be able to play what you do play as well as possible, and you can always go back and add to it when you're more comfortable. But for those who are ready for the next level, try and add that new strum to it. And if you don't want to do that, just strum down and down, because actually the two downs fit in the normal place that they always have been, even in the more advanced strum. So let's try that. C, G, A minor, F. That's the progression, and the timing remains the same for the entire piece of the song. So you're going to strum the new pattern 1 time per chord. So C, G, A minor, and then F. So jump in when you feel comfortable. We'll go around a couple more times, and then I'll start singing. A minor, F, C, G, A minor, and then F, C. Sometimes I lay under the moon and thank God I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I'm here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that they don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more war, and our children will play one day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. It's not about win or lose, 'cause we all lose when they feed on the souls of the innocent, blood-drenched pavement. Keep on moving, though the waters stay raging. In this maze, you might lose your way. Your way, it might drive you crazy, but don't let it face you. No way, no way. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that they don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more war, and our children will play one day, one day, one day. Oh, one day, one day, one day. Let's stop there, because the very next part of the song, I want to talk about a variation you can play to kind of break it up from the rest of what's happening. If you play something the very same the whole way through the song, you are establishing basically a flat line. And, flat lines aren't that exciting. But when you take a part and you either take away things or add things, it becomes a little bit more of a curve. You add a flow to the song, kind of a dynamic change to what is happening. And in this case, we're practicing a new strum, and that's enough. So what we probably want to do to create variation is to take some away, and for there to be less in one part of the song, so that it kind of, we have our line and then it dips down. And then when we go back to the strum that we were doing, it's going to sound even more interesting, because we've created a space and, changed the expectation. So now the expectation is less. When you play more, it's kind of like, oh, it's exciting again. So in this case, one day the song will change, we'll treat people the same, stop with the violence, stop with the hate. We'll do punches on the chords. That's when you just play one hit. In this case, if you can, try and stop the chord so that when you play it, it's kind of short. One day this all will change, we'll treat people the same, stop with the violence, stop with the hate. One day we'll all be free and proud to be under the same sun, singing songs of freedom like whoa. And then when you go back into the chords or the full strum, it's kind of like an the angels are singing kind of moment, because there's all of a sudden there's more going on. It's more full all of a sudden. So by bringing it down, you actually make the normal parts more exciting again. So let's try that. Let's play the chorus before kind of the breakdown, and I'll call it out, and we'll try doing the punches, one strum per chord. And if you can mute the chord so that it's short, just place your palm onto the strings. So strum, and then place your palm. That kind of a thing under the words. Okay, so let's try from one day. 1, 2, ready, go. One day, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day. Oh, one day, one day, one day. will change. We'll treat people the same. We'll stop with the violence, stop with the hate. One day we'll all be free and proud to be under the same sun, singing songs of freedom like whoa. And then we go back to the normal strum. Whoa, yo, yo, yo. Whoa, yo. And we could do the same thing again here with the strums. All my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that they don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more war, and our children will play one day, one day, one day. Oh, one day, one day, one day. One day, one day, one day. One day, one day, one day. One last time around, let's stop on the C. And stop. So by taking things away in the strum, we've created a curve in the song. And that sort of gives us the very beginnings of what you might consider like an arrangement, where the song has become a little more produced because we're intentionally making decisions about the rhythm and what's happening in the song and the dynamics and different things that are changing. And we're intentionally enforcing those actions that we're choosing to do instead of just kind of letting it happen and just doing the same thing the whole way through. So it's kind of the first step in building your musicality, is being able to interpret a song in a way where you create a curve. Okay, so the count for this strum, if you're counting kind of double time, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and the count would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So it kind of almost doubles each time as it goes down the way. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That would be the count. Though that's kind of confusing even to me to try and sit and figure it out. That's a lot to think about. So if you can just feel it, that's all the better. But again, if it's too much, just play the down, down. And you might find yourself kind of naturally doing that if I am half note, quarter note, and then eighth notes. So it doubles each time. All right, there was another question in here somewhere. What was it? Can you play it from the first to the fourth rather than fourth to the first? That was the one I was looking for, but I don't quite understand the question, Gail. So if you can elaborate on that, I'll try and answer that better. Let's try the song one more time, and I'm just gonna kind of play through it how I would play through it if it was just me playing, and try and listen for the points where I'm bringing down the energy, because that's really what you're doing when you minimize the strum and just play one strum. You're bringing the energy down so that when you go back to the full strum, it's like woo, you go in up on the roller coaster, down on the roller coaster, whatever you want to consider it. But it's a change, and that change can be very, very pleasant. So from the beginning, same kind of thing, but this time I'll be adding a little bit more pauses and dynamic changes so that I'm kind of producing the song and massaging it into its own production as we go along. So try and pay attention to those. I'll try and call them out when I think about it. But let's play through the song one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. C, G, A minor, F, C, G, A minor, F. Sometimes I lay under the moon and thank God I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I'm here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that they don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more war, and our children will play one day, one day, one day. Oh, one day, one day, one day. It's not about win or lose, 'cause we all lose when they feed on the souls of the innocent. Blood-drenched pavement, keep on moving, will the water stay raging? In this maze you might lose your way, your way. It might drive you crazy, but don't let it face you away, away. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that they don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more war, and our children will play one day, one day, one day. Oh, one day, one day, one day. Stop one day, decide what change, treat people the same. Stop with the violence, we'll stop with the hate. One day we'll all be free and proud to be under the same sun, singing songs of freedom like whoa, whoa, yo, 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 whoa, yo, yo. All my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that they don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more war, and our children will play one day, one day, one day. One day, one day, one day. Oh, one day, one day, one day. One day, one day, one day. This time let's stop on the F. By ending the song there, it kind of trails off and never resolves, but it's not quite as obnoxious and ending as like if we were to stop on the G. If we stopped on the G, it'd be like, come on, go somewhere else. But with the F, it's just kind of a, you're kind of floating when the song ends a little bit. So that's kind of how I would play the song in a simple way, just me, myself, and an ukulele, just, you know, playing with the dynamics, playing with the amount of energy and the amount of stuff I'm putting in to the strum and into the piece at one time. That's really the very beginning of creating kind of a style and a musicality, is being able to just interpret songs that follow a straight line and be able to put your own spin on it and create breaks and bring the energy down and play it louder. And, you know, if you play the verse just as loud as the chorus isn't going to be a whole lot more exciting. But if you listen to most musical arrangements, the chorus is the more exciting part, because, you know, there's more happening, there's more energy, there's more instruments and voices and more things happening. It's kind of that's the exciting part of the song. So if you play the verse just as loud as the chorus, you as a solo ukulele player don't really have anywhere else to go. You could try and play it louder, but it's probably not going to sound so good. So if you bring the verse down a little bit, then you have room to increase the volume so that the chorus can hit a little harder. So got a couple questions about the strumming going on here. Gail asks for the change in strum, mute strum up rather than mute strum down. I'm still not sure I am completely on the same page with you here. Is this for the break part? Because I haven't really taught any mutes inside the normal strumming pattern with the down, 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 up. You can always shift strums off of the time that they're intended to be, but it might not always have the same effect. Like in this sense, I'm emphasizing very specific beats that I feel kind of help the song move along. But you know, if you were to offset it so that when you count, you're starting your count in the middle of this strum pattern, you could basically shift everything so that it landed in a new place, and that would work as well. But it sounds like the question is for the down strums on the pauses. Gotcha. Now I'm there. Okay. So the question is whether when you're playing the down strums, if you're playing all downs, or if you play when this all will change, up strum on the next chord and then down strum. I believe that's what's happening here. So for me personally, you can do it both ways, but a lot of times your rhythm on an up strum, when you pause that long, it's gonna sound different. And in this case, I want each chord to be like bang. I want the whole band to sound like it's hitting right on that one chord. So I'm gonna use my more powerful strum, which is a down strum for each of the chords. So down, 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 down. That's how I would play it. You can, though, go down, up, down, up. But when you play up, you got to think that it's hard to get to the mute. If you play up, your hand isn't in a place to do the mute real fast. You have to mute with your fretting hand or hurry to catch up and move your hand, your strumming hand back into place to get the mute. So if you strum always down, your hand's kind of right there ready to do the mute sound, as opposed to when you strum up, you know, there's a bunch of empty space right here when I'm up, so I have to move my hands back into position. So that's how I would play it, is down, so you get those real powerful hits. Okay, let's see, there were a couple other questions. A tip for emphasizing a down or up strum, perhaps by not strumming all the strings. Okay, yeah. So what we've been doing is playing all the strings intentionally, playing everything kind of at a high volume. So like I said, we've got our sort of line that we're following. To play less, you either have to stop strumming or strum less, which is what the question is can you strum just some of the strings to get less, which you absolutely can. This is a very valuable trick to use, where you keep the strum going and you're actually hitting the strings, but you're not necessarily hitting all the strings. And I don't think this should be thought of as like, oh, I'm only going to strum on the G string, or I'm only going to strum on the A string, or I'm only going to strum on the G and the C strings. Trying to make it specific like that is very difficult. But instead, if you think, you just kind of angle your strumming so that when you strum, so it's almost like a half strum when you strum. It's just a smaller strum because you're not trying to push away all the way through the strings. Your hand is sort of popping outwards before you go all the way through all the strings. So if you wanted to play only the top strings, you would kind of strum out and away from yourself. So you would start in towards you and go away. So if I can kind of exaggerate it, you're strumming kind of outwards. And the same thing would go for if you wanted to just strum the bottom strings. You could strum from out, away from yourself, in, so that you're only hitting the bottom strings. And in this case, like just for example, you could do kind of like a country shuffle sort of a thing by using this pattern where you're keeping the strum pattern going, but you're only hitting a couple strings. So it almost sounds like a boom diddy kind of strum. I'm not a country player, obviously I haven't done that enough. you're kind of strumming a half strum on the top strings to get the boom, diddy, boom, diddy, boom, diddy, boom, diddy, boom. But I'm not trying to necessarily pick, because the alternative would be pick, pick strum, pick strum, pick strum, pick strum. It's a lot easier if you just kind of do a soft, loud, and you think about it more in that sense of using part of the strum to bring your volume down. So that's how I would kind of do it, is you angle your strum away from yourself or into the instrument for the bottom strings. Here's a really good question from Rhea. It's not a stupid question at all. On the G major chord, can you switch placement of the index and middle fingers? It's easier for me to place my third finger on D. So usually I count the fingers 1, 2, 3, 4. So the third finger throws me off a little bit there, but switching the index and middle fingers, the question is basically, this is how we normally play it. Can you also play it like this? And you can, but in my experience, there are more chords that you can easily get to by fingering with your index finger topmost and towards on the ceiling side. If you reverse it, for instance, the real classic easy change from G, if you're playing in the key of G, would be to play a G chord, and then you hop your fingers up to play like a D7 chord, a Hawaiian D7. But if your fingers are backwards, you're going to end up playing the D7 backwards as well. And by turning your wrist in, I find it seems like you put a lot of pressure on your wrist by doing it that way. It's a lot more natural for your wrist to be this way than to be this way. This you have to force your hand to be there, whereas you have a lot of motion going this way that you never use up by having your index finger on top. So if you can, I would recommend practicing with your index finger closest to the ceiling, but you can do it this way. But I really feel like this is the better option for ease of playing down the road and also for ergonomics. For sure. Because a lot of times the game with chord changes is you want to think about where you're going and where you're coming from. And if you play a fingering to get by with a certain chord that's giving you trouble, you can do it and it might work for that chord, but it might kind of put you in a bad position for going to the next chord. So a lot of the fingering conventions that I teach and that you see taught in most places are used because it makes it easier to go to the next chord. And of course, you can always improvise and you can always change things. Like, I've seen people play G with their last 3 fingers, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But, when you want to go to C, are you going to lift up and slide your third finger back, or are you going to try and play it with your pinky? It kind of shifts everything out of place for the other chords you might transition to. So that's something to keep in mind, is that usually the conventional fingerings are that way because in addition to being, the proper way to hold a certain chord, it also allows you to go to other chords easier and make the finger switches a little more convenient, usually. But that said, you have to do what works for you because, not all bodies are the same and hands certainly function differently. And I've had to create workarounds for different students that have a hard time with doing one thing or another for some reason. So kind of no, but sort of yes. Any other questions about what we've done all week? Hopefully everybody was able to follow along and have some enjoyable success on their side. That's kind of the regrettable thing about this live streaming thing, is I can't, connect with each and every person and actually see what you're doing to kind of give you the teacher feedback, which I'm used to, which I think is very helpful, being able to, it's even more helpful to be in the room and to kind of see it in a 3D space. That's, as a teacher, that's really the gold. But on screen, at least, I could kind of critique and help you out. So hopefully you're able to take something from this that in the one-way teaching setting. On the Hawaiian ending, is it 1-4-1? Yes, for island style, the ending that we were playing is 1-5-1. And the 1-5-1 is just a kind of theory way of naming the chords so that when you go to change keys, the distances between everything are always the same, right? No matter what key or pitch you're in. Remember, I took my phone and I moved the Bruno Mars song up and down. Everything was the same distance away. If it wasn't, it wouldn't sound like the same song. But it is, and everything just moves up and down. So what naming the chords with numbers does is it allows you to play the same distances between things in any key. And for instance, in this case, playing the island style ending, 1-5-1, we're just attaching a numerical value to the chords that we're playing. So if we wanted to go into another key, say I wanted to play island style in the key of G, everything's the same distance from each other still, but I've changed the pitch so that I'll be singing in a different place. It's still a 1-5-1 because everything's the same distance from each other. If I was to go into any of the 12 keys and play 1-5-1, it would still sound the same because the distances between everything are the same. It's just the pitch is raised or lowered. Gail says, glad I accidentally found your site. Yes, most people find me by accident, but I like to think it's pretty useful for most people. If you haven't checked it out already, liveukulele.com. It's sort of the big brother counterpart of what I do on YouTube. The YouTube really came after the website, and it's kind of just a side project when I feel like making a video or something. But the website is really where I put most of my focus, and there's way, way, way more content on the website than on YouTube even. And the YouTube videos supplement what's already on the website. So if you go to any page on the website, a lot of times there's a video to go along with what's already there and the materials that are included. So check that out if you haven't already. Steven says he just did a chat group with Kirk LaRange on guitar on Zoom. Were you playing with him, or was it like a lesson kind of a thing? I don't recognize that name. But I'm glad you had a great time. That sounds good. Having the visual connection is great for the musicians, but I haven't found an option that allows me to play with somebody online. The audio lag is just too much. Thank you, Julia. Take care of yourself in Germany. It's so cool to see that everybody's tuning in from around the world. Good as always to see you, Michael. Thanks for showing up. Can I do more group lessons like this? I bet some of us would be willing to pay some money for it. I can. It is possible. I've been thinking that my next step and the next thing I want to work on is creating courses to accompany my right-hand technique and left-hand technique books. And those are going to be a little bit more applied, because with the video format, it's easier to show what's happening. But I also want to expand upon the content that's in the book to, have song examples and to play things using the techniques that are in the book. And I'd like to think that would kind of fill the group lesson gap in a way, and I can put my time towards that as well. But that's not saying that this will be the very last of the lessons, but I'll take a little break this weekend and see how I'm feeling. Maybe we can continue doing this, but that's to be determined. Not quite sure yet, but I'm always working on content that I hope will be useful to people. And if you sign up for my mailing list on the website, that's the best way you can hear about what I'm doing. And yeah, stay up to date on the different lessons that I release. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. I'm so glad we were able to do this and that it kept coming back. We had like 40 people at least for each class. That's by far bigger than my initial live lesson experiment that I did a handful of months ago. If time permits, could you do a quick reggae strum? Yeah, let's talk about reggae strumming, because after all, One Day is kind of a reggae song. Montes Yahoo is a reggae artist. So it only makes sense that I would give you a reggae strum. Not that you really need it to play One Day, but it's great rhythmic practice regardless. Even if you don't like reggae, just being able to play the strum is tremendous musicianship building. It's very, very powerful stuff. So with a reggae strum, you're playing on the offbeat, and that's usually going to be the and or the 2 and the 4, depending on kind of how the song is counted and how fast it moves along. In this case, let's just focus on the and. So what we've been playing all week is pretty much down strums. What reggae does is it reverses that. So pretty much all you play are up strums on the offbeat. Not necessarily up strums, but you're playing specifically on the offbeat. For instance, if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm hitting the beat with a hammer. Boom, boom, boom. I'm right on time, and I'm going down with the time. With reggae, you're playing in between the counts. So it'd be like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And the signature thing with reggae is that the chords are stopped short, almost always. So the easiest way to do that is to play chords that are fretted up the neck, so all the strings are covered. A lot of times these are bar chords. For instance, blah, 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 blah. Let's see, what would be a good... Let's use B flat, because a lot of people know B flat. Even if they resent it, they know B flat. But if you play B flat, that's a good reggae chord because all the strings are covered. And when you lift your fingers up, the chord is going to stop. And I'm just illustrating lifting all the way off. But when you lift, you only need to lift far enough so that the strings come off the frets. Don't actually lift your fingers off the strings, because then you're going to make more noise. You don't want to hear the open strings chatter after you play the strum. So instead, strum and lift so that your fingers come to rest in a mute position. Okay, so if you're playing strum, you stop the chord by lifting it. And a lot of times when I'm doing this, I like to think that I'm squeezing when I strum. If I squeeze and strum at the same time, it makes it easier for me to play this than trying to think holding the chord down and lifting when I don't want to hear the chord. Instead, I'm just assuming that I want all chords to be short, and when I just pump the chord a little bit with my hand at the same time that I strum, I'm getting that pop, kind of a chord, short chord timing. Right? That's what I'm going for, is to just cut the chord off every time. Short, short, short. But the thing with reggae is that what I'm playing there, it's basically the same as what we were playing all week with the down strums. But in my mind, I'm offsetting it by an eighth note so that I'm actually on the and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That really is the trick, because you need to make space in the music. Where you sing your melody is going to play off of where your rhythm is. So if you're playing reggae and you're thinking, oh, I'm playing reggae, but you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, you're not actually playing reggae. You're just playing on the downbeat and stopping your chords quickly. Reggae, you need to be counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, because it's off. That's the reason it's so weird and it's so challenging, is because it's always on the offbeat. So I think the best thing you can probably do to practice a reggae strum is to listen to lots of reggae and to specifically tune into what the guitar or the keyboard part is doing, because they're playing on the offbeat. And if you can get to the point where you're feeling where they're playing, then you hear how the rest of the band is holding up the space where they're not playing. That's the one difference when you're playing solo ukulele reggae, is that you have to just leave space at the beginning of the bar and trust in the fact that there's nothing there. You trust that there's nothing there. So if I'm playing 1 and 2 and, I have to just sit and wait on the 1. I don't even get to play. That's where the bass and the drums would be playing if I was in a full band. So I need to make that space regardless. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, if I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, my reggae strums are going to be on the 2 and the 4. This is a case of where the speed at which you count kind of affects whether you're on the ands or the 2 and the 4. But either way, it's still an upbeat feel. So if I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, I have to wait on the 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the basics of reggae. There are a set of videos that I made that kind of go deeper into the subject. If you want to check those out, check out my channel. They are on there somewhere. Let's see. So another reminder that if you missed out on some of the lessons, they're all saved on my YouTube channel. You can go back and review what we worked on and even practice along with what we were doing if you want to get a little bit of a better hold on what I was teaching. That's a great way that these live lessons continue to be resources even once they're done. The only difference is you don't get to be part of the chat. Someone said Facebook Live works without lag. I haven't heard that myself personally, but it'd be something to look into and check out. It seems like there would still be lag. It's not even that the audio lags from the video, but it's the fact that the whole works needs to go, across an ocean and then to your house, and then from your house across the ocean to my house. It becomes such a long distance that there's latency kind of no matter what you do. But hopefully the technology can work around that. I'll have to look into the Facebook thing. You're all so very welcome. Yeah, we had 45 at the height today. That was the peak of what's going on there. Chris says, get Brad's left and right hand ebooks. They're awesome. Thanks so much. I like to think that they're awesome. Definitely with what's going on in the world, it's, and I say this just in general, if there are artists that you appreciate and you can't go see them on tour or you can't go to their workshops or whatever, most people who are out in the industry professionally have products, and that's people have been like, oh, how can we support the musicians? It's just like, get their stuff. That is probably the best way to contribute to the cause. I'm not necessarily talking my stuff, because I only want people who are interested in the products to be buying them. But just in general, as far as artists and musicians go, they're making their art, and most of them have a product that they can share, and that's probably the best way to support them in these troubled times. The rooster wants in the show. Yes, they do want in the show. Oh. Yeah, the chickens are good fun. I've grown up with chickens my whole life, and they're just, even 27 years later, they're still cracking me up every time I sit and watch them for a while. How do you mute for C or F chords? That's a good question, because with the reggae strum, you always want to be able to lift and mute. But when you play open chords, these are not as good for reggae playing or playing where you want to mute the chords. In that case, when you're playing an open chord, you have to mute by either lifting your fingers off and, you basically do either a palm mute where you strum and then you put your hand on the string so they stop. That's your one option. Your other option is to use a finger mute, so that a finger on your left hand hovers over the strings and then drops down when you want to cut the strings off. Usually they call that a pinky mute. You can do it with other fingers though as you play, but usually it's the pinky mute that is what's used. I believe Aldrin Guerrero did a video on this many years ago for Ukulele Underground. That would be something to look up for using the pinky mute. But the solution probably for long-term playing of reggae would be to learn higher versions of C and F that are closed and use up all the strings, because then you can use the lift mute, which tends to be the easiest and most controllable way to mute the strings. So by having those voicings up the neck, you can always lift and mute the chords. Virginia asks, do you have a video on playing scales? Yes, I do. They should be in a playlist called The Scale Files, and I actually walk through how to play individual scales. There's like eight 8 videos or something, and each one focuses on a different scale. Yep. Yeah. So thank you all so much for hanging out all week. It's really been fun and kind of a great distraction for me to be able to participate with people and share my knowledge and do the whole music thing. It really is medicine. And yeah, I wish you all the very best and take care of yourselves. Stay home. Just stay home. It's the best thing you can do at this time. If you got any travel plans, just stay home. You know, everybody's on vacation right now. That's just what we're doing. So that said, wish you all the best. Have a very nice weekend as best as possible. And yeah, I'll catch you on the other side. Subscribe to my stuff, check out the website, and I'll see you down the road. Yeah, you're all very welcome. Aloha.